Okay, so this is the third video for the fall final review, so I'm going to jump to question number 20. So for question number 20, we want to graph the function and then also describe the transformations. So I'm going to start just by graphing. So I'm going to subtract the 3 over because it belongs to the y, because if it belonged to the x, it would be grouped. Okay, so then my start is going to be at 2, 3. So I do x before y, so I want to do opposite, so 2 and then 3. And then my stretch is going to be 1, so it's the implied number in front. So I'm going to go over 2, up 3, and then I have a stretch of 1, and then reflect to the other side because it's a quadratic. And then it's going to be curved, so I'm just going to do a little part of it here. And so then if I look at my transformation here, it says f of x minus 4, so it wants me to take my y values and then move the whole graph down 4. So then I'm going to move the entire graph down 4, so I have to describe that, so I'm going to write that out. So I'm going to move down 4. And so I'm just going to take my start point, which is here, and move it down 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it's still going to have the same stretch because we're just moving the graph. So then I'm just going to go up 1 over 1 and then up 1 over 1. And there is my transformation. And then I'm going to put this in pink here. So that's just to let the person know who's looking at this that this is the graph that is here, right? And then let's take a look at question number 21. Okay, so for question 21, I want to put it into standard form. So I'm going to add the 1 over because it does not belong to the x. If it did, it would be grouped. So then that would be y plus 1 equals negative 1/2 absolute value of x plus 4. So then my start point, I want to do x before y. So I have plus 4, so that would be negative 4. And then plus 1, so negative 1. So we want to do opposites on that. And then my stretch is negative 1/2. So I'm going to go to negative 4, negative 1. And then my stretch is negative 1/2. So I can either go down 1/2 over 1 or down 1 over 2 because it's linear. And then it's absolute value, right? So absolute value. So then that's going to be a V shape but negative. So if I did go down 1/2 over 1, I would just have that point there, right? Okay, so now I'm going to look at my transformation. So this says negative g of x. So this is negative y. So that means my y values are going to become opposite. So here's my y-axis. So I want to be opposite. So anything down, I'm moving up, or up, moving down. So the y is going opposite. So what am I jumping across is the x-axis. So then when I describe it, I would say reflect across the x-axis. So then this dot right here is going to be, instead of at negative 1, it's going to be up here at positive 1. And then the stretch will still be the same, but reversed, right, because I'm moving up. So this graph is going to reflect up. So then I would go up 1 over 2 and up 1 left 2. And then that would be a reflection across the x-axis because the y values are opposite, meaning I'm jumping back and forth that way. Okay? Okay, so for question number 22, so for here I have my start point is going to be at negative 3, comma 0, because I'm not adding or subtracting anything to 0. So negative 3, 0. And then this is exponential, so that's just my asymptote. And then my stretch is 2, so I'm going to go up 2 over 1 from my start point. And then 1 above. And so now for my transformation, so I'm going to look here. And so for this, I'm going to do opposite. So I'm going to move right 4. But I'm going to keep that the same and move up 1. So right 4, up 1. So I'm going to start from my asymptote and I'm going to move right 4 and up 1. And then from here, my stretch will still be the same. So I'm just going to go up 2 over 1 and then 1 above. I could also count each of these points, right? I can count this one over 4 and up 1, and then this one over 4 and up 1. But I can just use the stretch in this from the original, okay? And then let's take a look at question number 23. So I'm going to add the 2 over to the other side, because if it belonged to the x, it would be grouped. So then for my start point, I want to do opposite. So this says x minus 4, so then that would be positive 4. And then y plus 2, that would be negative 2. And then my stretch is 3. So over 4, and then down 2, and then my stretch is 3. And then this is linear, so then I'm going to do go the other direction as well. So pretend that's a straight line. Okay. And so now for my transformation. And so I have a negative g of x, so that means I'm going to make my y values negative or opposite. So anything that's down is going to go up and anything up going down. So I'm going back and forth along the y. So that means I'm reflecting across the x. So I'm reflecting across the x-axis, but then I'm also going to go up 1. So this is negative g of x again, right? So negative y values. So my y values are going to become opposite. So I'm jumping across the x-axis, and then I'm also having to shift up 1. So I'm just going to move my start point here. So my start point was at negative 2, so I'm going to move it to 2. And then up 1. So it was at negative 2, so reflect to positive 2, and then up 1. Okay, and then this dot, I'm going to reflect, so down here, and then up 1. Right, so it jumps to negative 1, and then up 1. And then there's my reflection. Okay. Right, and then let's take a look at 24. So for question number 24, we have 2 different functions here, and we're trying to evaluate. And so we have 2 different equations that we have to evaluate into, so we have to know which function to use. So here this is saying that I want to evaluate f of 3. So they're telling me that x is equal to 3. And so I have to decide, do I substitute into the top equation or into the bottom? So do I replace that x with 3 or that x with 3? And I'm going to replace this x with 3 because my x value is greater than 2. So I'm using the bottom equation and replacing that x with 3 because my x is 3, which is greater than 2. And then I want to simplify. So 3 squared is 9. 3 times 9 is 27. And 1 minus 27 is negative 26. So then f of 3 equals negative 26. Okay, so for part B, they want me to let x equal 2. So I'm going to use the top equation. So I'm going to replace that x with 2. And I'm using this equation because my x is 2, which is equal to 2. So less than or equal to 2. This one, it can't be equal, right? No minor need. So my x is 2, so I'm using this equation, and my x is equal to 2. So then simplify. So 2 squared, and then 4 plus 1. So f of 2 is equal to 5. Okay, and then for 24C, I'm going to do f of 0. Let's add one more here. So again, I have to decide, do I use the top or the bottom equation? So I'm going to use the top equation and replace x with a 0. So my x is equal to 0, right? So I want to replace this x with 0, and I'm choosing the top equation because the x I have is less than or equal to 2. So my x is smaller than 2, so I want to use the top equation. So anything to the 0 power, so 2 to the 0 is 1, and then 1 plus 1 is 2. So then f of 0 is equal to 2. So 25 is the same idea, it's just more of a true or false statement, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at 25. So for question number 25, I have f of 3, so I know x is 3. And I'm checking to see, is it really equal to -1, true or false? So x equals 3, so I'm going to substitute it into the bottom equation. So the same equation, but replace x with 3. And I'm choosing this equation because my value of x, which is 3, is greater than or equal to 0. So my x is greater than or equal to 0, so replace x with 3. And then simplify. So start with the absolute values. So that would be 3 minus 1 is 2. And I don't need absolute values around that because that is positive, right? And then -2 times 2 is -4. And -4 plus 3 is -1. And so that's what is here. So then that's a true statement. Right? Because we got -1 also. Okay, so let's try B. So for B, I have that my x value is 2. So I want to substitute into the bottom equation because the x I have, which is 2, is greater than or equal to 0. So my x is greater than or equal to 0, so I'm going to use the bottom equation. So replace x with 2. So 2 minus 1 is 1. -2 times 1 is -2. And -2 plus 3 is +1. So I got 1, they got 6, so that is a false statement because these are not the same. Okay? All right, and the rest of those are the same, so I'll let you figure that part out. Okay? All right, and then let's do just a couple of more on this video. So for question number 26, we want to solve the absolute value equation. So the first thing I always want to do is isolate the absolute value. So I'm going to subtract 1. And 12 minus 1 is 11. And then once the absolute value is isolated, I want to make two equations. So one where this is positive, and then one where the inside could be negative. And then once I do that, I just want to solve like normal. So let me go this way. So x is equal to 3. So like subtract 2 and then divide by 3. So I get x equals 3, and then I want to do the same thing over here. So I can either divide by -1 or I can distribute. It really doesn't matter which way I go. So I'm just going to distribute on this one. And then solve for x. So I want to add 2, and I'm kind of running out of room, so just pretend I added 2. So plus 2, that would cancel, and then 11 plus 2 is 13. And then divide by -3. So then x would equal -13 over 3. And then they asked me to graph this on a number line, so I'm just going to do that up here. So -13/3 is smaller, so it's going to go here, and then at x equals 3 there. Okay. All right, and then let's take a look at 27. So I want to isolate the absolute value first, so I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by 5 over 2. So that will cancel. And then 20 times 5 is 100, and 1 times 2 is 2. So that's 100 divided by 2, which is 50. And then once I get to here, I'm going to make two equations and solve each of those. So I have the positive equation. And then the negative. And then solve for x. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. And then divide by 3. So 48 divided by 3 is 16. So on this one, so the last one I distributed, so this one I'm going to go ahead and divide. So I can divide both sides by -1. And then subtract 2. And divide by 3. And so that doesn't divide evenly, so I just have those two numbers. And then for my number line, let's do that just at the top here. So 2 solutions, and so my negative is -52/3, and my positive is 16. And that would be the solution. Okay? And then that's it for this video.